Hi guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Bobo and I make videos around faith. And in today's video I wanted to talk about God. God makes all things beautiful in his own time, as you all know, in Ecclestiastes 3:11. And yeah, let's get into the video. Okay, so my main scripture for this video was actually Ecclestiastes 3:11, and it says, NLT version says, "Yet God has made everything beautiful for its own time. He has planted eternity in the human heart, but even so, people cannot see the whole scope of God's work from beginning to end." And I've been meditating on this scripture prior to beginning of this year, and there's a time God was asking me, is it Val, is it my time or your time? And I just thought I'd share and just talk a little bit about God's time and our own time. Scripture itself, I like this NLT version where it says that sometimes we do not even see the whole scope of God's work from beginning to end. And we saw the same where God was asking Job, where Job and God were asking and answering each other's questions. And God asked Job, were you there when I created the ocean, the seas, and the whole thing? We can never comprehend the magnitude of why God does some things or why God allows some things to happen to us. And I think this is a scripture where hata watu hawajaokoka, they actually use it. I don't know why. I was actually thinking about how sometimes we overuse this scripture and we don't understand the magnitude of the weight of this scripture. We always start and leave it from, he makes all things beautiful in his own time. But the ending says that we can never understand the whole magnitude of God's work. And I wanted to dig into a story that I love. This is my favorite story. Every time that I'm stuck between my will and God's will, I always refer to Hezekiah, the story of Hezekiah. And as we all know, it's going to be from 2 Kings 20 verse 1. Isaiah prophesied about the death of Hezekiah, where as Hezekiah got sick. I think he was a skin disease where he was gonna die about it. I can't remember what it was, but he got sick and Isaiah prophesied about his death. And I will go there to 2 Kings 20 verse 1, and it says, so I'll just summarize, I won't read the whole thing, but specifically so verse 2 says, when Hezekiah heard this, he turned his face, I'm reading an NLT version, he turned his face to the wall and prayed to the Lord. Verse 3 says, "Remember, O Lord, how I have always been faithful to you, and have served you single-mindedly, always doing what pleases you." Then he broke down and wept bitterly. So Hezekiah, God sent Isaiah to Hezekiah to tell him that he was gonna die. But before Isaiah had left in the middle courtyard, this message came to him from the Lord: "Go back to Hezekiah, the leader of my people. Tell him, this is what the Lord, the God of your ancestor David, has said. I have heard your prayer and seen your tears. I will heal you in 3 days, and you will get out of your bed and go to the temple of the Lord. I will add 15 years to your life, and I will rescue you and this city from the king of Assyria. I will defend this city for my own honor and for the sake of my servant David." After Isaiah was sent to Hezekiah to tell him about his death, Hezekiah pleaded with God, and we are always pleading with God. There's nothing wrong with pleading with God, but we always have to. My main point in this video is actually to indicate that we have to know the stand of God, which is his will and our desire. So in this case, will Hezekiah was for him to live, but God, you can read towards the end of the scripture where Mungu amesema God added 15 years to Hezekiah's life. But prior to God sending this prophecy to Hezekiah, he had seen those 15 years, that in the 15 years Manasseh would have been born. Now we all know what Manasseh became. Manasseh was the son of Hezekiah. So these are 15 years that God was preventing Hezekiah from, where he knew Manasseh would be born. So my point is, God added 15 years to Hezekiah, and in those 15 years Manasseh was born. But because Hezekiah pleaded with God, and at verse 4, 5 and 6 says, God heard Hezekiah. So God always hears our prayers, but we have to always ask ourselves, is it God's will or it's my desire? Because sometimes when we plead with God, I feel like sasa hivyo ndivyo nataka nitakupea, but we are not always seeking the will of God. Hezekiah, when Manasseh was born, Manasseh became a king, where he was the king of Judah, and we all know the the tribe of Judah was cast right to a point where in 10 years, it was 10 years that a king was after Manasseh, God said that a king will not be born, will not come out of Judah in 10 years. So after Manasseh became the king, we saw him leading the people of Judah to worship idols, and God was actually so mad, and to a point where he destroyed. And kama in these 15 years, if like Manasseh was he was just a mess. You guys can read 2 Kings 21, chapter 21, yeah. And if Hezekiah didn't live for these 15 years that God added to him that he pleaded for, Manasseh will never be born. And we all know the tribe of Judah became a mess where they were worshipping idols. Like God was just so mad with them, and at the end he ended up actually dying. Anyway, anything that you get at your own time will be taken away because you're not ready, but anything that you get in God's time will stay, because God's time is not equivalent to our own time. Most of the time God sees things that we cannot see. There's so many. Ecclesiastes 3:11 towards the end says we do not see from the beginning to end, and that's why we call God the Alpha and Omega. He sees the beginning to end. He sees that when you compare, I'll got it here, here, and here. Like, this is not matching, so I will have to let this happen first for you to. So there's so much that we cannot comprehend about the things of God. So we have to learn to know, is it my will or is it God's will? My desires versus God's will, or my God's will versus my desire. And it is not wrong to plead with God, but when you're pleading with God, also be aware, is it God's will or is it my desires? And that's all I had to share for this video, and I hope that you will learn to not to plead with God, we learn to walk in God's will, and to learn to allow God to align us to his will. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe, like, share, and comment, and I will see you on my next video. Bye. Thank you for watching.